Miss Knife.
Yes.
I forgot my book in my desk, and since I'm not at school, my dad was gonna come by and pick it up.
Well, you can just you can just follow along today. It's not a big deal. I don't
Okay.
even know if we're gonna actually start reading it today. We might just talk about it. So, does everyone have their beautiful book? This we read this like every day in fifth grade. Fun fact, or every day, every year in fifth grade they read it. And traditionally, a few years ago we used to read it like in reading class, but we just don't have time for that anymore. So now we're reading it in our reading RTI. Mrs. Sittig's class is reading it in her RTI, and Mrs. Jones's will eventually read it in their RTI. So this will be our last reading RTI book for the year, which is crazy to think about that we're on our fourth quarter. And oh look, sticky notes in my book. Huh. Don't know how those got there. I happen to really like this book. It is it's a good one. I haven't decided what we're gonna do yet. Totally, I don't know if we're gonna do questions. I don't know. I might have you guys do like a PowerPoint as we go. I have not 100% decided what we're gonna do, but today we're going to make a short list of something as soon as I find myself a marker. So hold on. All right. So first things first, the most important thing to tell you about with this story is this is a story within a story. Does anyone know what that means? Anyone? Does anyone know what that means? A story within a story? No? Okay. So, us. Yes, Evan.
It's kind of like maybe someone who read it's in a book, and then maybe it's like someone who's reading a book that tells you about that book.
No, not exactly. Hannah, you're kind of on the right track. So we're obviously reading a story, right? Like we're reading a book. We're going to be reading about Salamonica Tree Hill, and she goes by Sal. And in the book, Sal is telling a story. So we're going to be hearing two different stories. We're going to be hearing about Sal's story, and then we're also going to be hearing about Phoebe Winterbottom's story from Sal. So I'm going to, yes, her name is Sal, Sal. I'm going to read the back to you, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and we're going to make a list, okay? So, like I said, it's a story within the story. So this is a John Newbery Medal Award winner, which not that many books have. Not every book is a Newbery Award winner. I should look up what that actually means. Anyways, it's a great book. So the back, feel free to follow along if you have your book with you. 13-year-old Salamonica Tree Hill, known as Sal, is traveling from Ohio to Idaho with her grandparents in search of her mother. Along the way, she tells them the story of Phoebe Winterbottom, who receives mysterious messages, met a potential lunatic, and whose mother disappeared. Beneath Phoebe's story is Sal's story and that of her mother, who left one day for Idaho and has not returned. Sal has less than 2 weeks to get to Idaho in time for her mother's birthday and bring her back. Despite her father's warning that she is fishing in the air, Sal knows this journey is the only chance she has for reuniting her family. So, throughout this story, we're going to hear all about Sal's trip with her grandparents, and you guys are going to meet her grandparents, and they are literally, they crack me up. They make crazy decisions. They're super funny. And it's all about the quest to find to find her mother who is gone. Her mother left for Idaho. We're going to find out why her mom left. And Sal's just trying to bring her back. So yeah, she does have that funny name, Salamonica Tree Hill, and we find out why she has that name in the story. Um, so why do people go on trips? Olivia, why does someone go on a trip?
Maybe to go on vacation or to find something.
Okay, to find something, to go on vacation. People might go on trips like because they're moving, so they might be like, moving somewhere. That's another reason to have a trip. Olive, for work is another one. So people go on trips because they need to go find something. People go on trips for work. People go on trips for vacation. People go on trips because they might be moving to that specific place. I meant like long trips, Isabella, not just like a quick trip. I meant like travel. Why do people travel? I shouldn't have said trip. I should have said travel. But we're also going to hear about a lot of different sites in here. And they are, because Sal and her grandparents are literally going from Ohio to Idaho, and they see a lot of sites, like sightseeing. So we're going to hear about those, and they're real sites in America, because Ohio and Idaho, that's in America. So that's also exciting too. So, it's by Sharon Creech, and like I said, this is just a really good book, and I'm excited to read with you guys, and I still have not totally decided what project we're going to do. If you have a cover like mine, some of you may have a different cover, but if you have a cover like mine, on like the kind of bottom, there's a little quote, and the quote says, Jameson, can we talk about that in a minute right now? Can we just focus on this? The quote says, "Don't judge a man until you've walked 2 moons in his moccasins." Anyone wanna tell me what you think that means? Before we've even read the book, drop some wisdom on me. What do you think that means when I say don't judge a man until you've walked 2 moons in his moccasins? Moccasins are a type of shoes, Isabella. Specifically what like Native Americans used to wear. Some people, I mean, you can buy moccasins today, but they're not like the type of moccasins that people used to wear. The moccasins were traditionally created by Native Americans. They'd be made out of like animal hide skin, and it just was a type of shoe. Okay? Anyone? Hannah, Druber, you wanna tell us what you think that means? Don't judge him until he succeeds. Maybe. Olivia?
That if you judge someone, you might not know what they're going through, so they could be having a really bad life, and then you might make it worse, and you wouldn't know what they're going through.
Okay. Kaden also put in the comments, don't judge people until you walked in their shoes or their life or that problem. That's a common thing we hear all the time. Like, oh, don't judge someone until you walked in their shoes. Okay, well, instead of saying shoes, this one says moccasins. So, like I said, super pumped about the story. And on the page, it once again says, don't judge a man until you've walked 2 moons in his moccasins. And there are a lot of chapters in here. Fun fact. See all these? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapters blah, 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 all the way goes to chapter 44. Okay? So there's a lot of chapters, but it's because most chapters are pretty short. Like some chapters are a lot of pages, but then some chapters are only a few pages. So the entire book is less than 300 pages. So it's about the same length as Restart, if you read Restart with us. And Landon looked it up and said it is worth 9 points. So good to go. So we're going to start chapter 1 today. All right. Chapter 1. A face at the window. A face at the window. Gramps says that I am a country girl at heart, and that is true. I have lived most of my 13 years in By Banks, Kentucky, which is not much more than a caboodle of houses roosting in a green spot alongside the Ohio River. Just over a year ago, my father plucked me up like a weed and took me and all of our belongings. No, that is not true. He did not bring the chestnut tree, the willow, the maple, the hayloft, or the swimming hole, which all belonged to me. And we drove 300 miles straight north and stopped in front of a house in Euclid, Ohio. All right. So in that first paragraph, we just found something out super important about Sal. What did we just find out about Sal in that first little bit? That first paragraph. What did we find out about Sal? Mackenzie, what did we find out? You can type it in the chat, or you can say it. Yeah, her father didn't just take her somewhere. They moved, okay? And she's saying, my father plucked me up. So she had lived in Bybanks, Kentucky forever, her whole life. And then all of a sudden, her father plucked her and moved her 300 miles to Euclid, Ohio. No trees, I said. This is where we're going to live? No, my father said. This is Margaret's house. The front door of the house opened, and a lady with wild red hair stood there. I looked up and down the street. The houses were all jammed together, like a row of birdhouses. In front of each house was a tiny square of grass, and in front of that had a thin gray sidewalk running alongside the road. Where's the barn? I asked. The river, the swimming hole. Oh, Sal, my father said. Come on. There's Margaret. He waved to the lady at the door. We have to go back. I forgot something. The lady with wild red hair opened the door and came out onto the porch. In the back of my closet, I said, under the floorboard. I put something there, and I've got to have it. Don't be a goose. Come and see Margaret. I did not want to see Margaret. I stood there looking around, and that's when I saw the face pressed up against an upstairs window next door. It was a round girl's face, and it looked afraid. I didn't know it then, but that face belonged to Phoebe Winterbottom, a girl who had a powerful imagination, who would become my friend, and who would have many peculiar things happen to her. What does peculiar mean? If something peculiar happens to you, what does that mean? Type it in my chat. What does peculiar mean, friends? All right. I don't necessarily think they're bad, Hannah. Peculiar things don't have to be bad. I think they're strange. I like the word interesting, maybe odd. Peculiar things, like maybe a little bit odd, out of the ordinary. That's a good way to put it, Caden. Not long ago, when I was locked in the car with my grandparents for 6 days, I told them the story of Phoebe. And when I finished telling them, or maybe even as I was telling them, I realized that the story of Phoebe was like the plaster wall in our old house in Bybanks, Kentucky. My father started chipping away at a plaster wall in the living room of our house in Bybanks shortly after my mother left us one April morning. Our house was an old farmhouse that my parents had been restoring room by room. Each night, as he waited to hear from my mother, he chipped away at that wall. On the night we got the bad news that she was not returning, he pounded and pounded on the wall with a chisel and a hammer. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he came up to my room. I was not asleep. He led me downstairs and showed me that what he had found, hidden behind the wall, was a brick fireplace. The reason that Phoebe's story reminds me of that plaster wall and the hidden fireplace is that beneath Phoebe's story was another one, mine. So that was kind of like just a little intro. Dun, 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 dun. So we have already learned that she once lived in Bybanks, Kentucky, and now she lives in Euclid, Ohio. We also learned that there's some lady named Margaret with wild red hair. We learned that there's Phoebe Winterbottom, who's going to be her friend and has a lot of weird things happen to her. And we also learned that her mom left one April morning and that they found out her mother wasn't returning. We don't know why she's not returning. We don't know why she's left. But anyways, not coming back. All right, we are going to read chapter 2, and then we are going to stop today. The Chickabiddy starts a story. It was after all the adventure of Phoebe that my grandparents came up with the plan to drive me from Kentucky to Ohio, where they would drive from Kentucky to Ohio, where they would pick me up, and then the three of us would drive 2,000 miles west to Lewiston, Idaho. This is how I came to be locked in a car with them for nearly a week. It was not a trip that I was eager to take, but it was one I had to take. Gramps had said. We'll see the whole ding-dong country. Gramps squeezed my cheeks and said, this trip will give me a chance to be with my favorite chickabiddy again. I am, by the way, their only chickabiddy. What do we think chickabiddy is if we're talking about Graham and Gramps? What is she? If she's their chickabiddy, what does that mean? And their only chickabiddy? Grandkid. Yep, you're right, Zach. It means that they're her granddaughter. My father said that Graham couldn't read maps worth a hill of beans and that he was grateful that I had agreed to go along and help them find their way. I was only 13, and although I did have a way with maps, it was not really because of that skill that I was going, nor was it to see the whole ding-dong country that Graham and Gramps were going. The real reason we're buried beneath piles and piles of unsaid things. It's not great-great-great-great-child, Landon. It's just grandchild. Some of the reasons were Graham and Gramps wanted to see Mama, who was resting peacefully in Lewiston, Idaho. Graham and Gramps knew I wanted to see Mama, but I was too afraid to. Dad wanted to be alone with red-headed Margaret Cadaver, and he had already seen Mama, and he had not taken me. Hello? No, my power school ended up working. Is your guys' not? I'll send it out, thing. Okay, mine worked, so I put it in the thing, but I'll send it down. Oh, wait, or do you just want to know right now? I guess we're on the phone. Okay, no Nolan Haddad, no Julian Young, and no Kylan Unger. Kylan Unger. All right, thank you. Bye. What's up, Ava? Yes. All right. So we just found 3 reasons why she agreed to go on this trip, besides the fact that she's really good with maps. Good to know she's good with maps. But when we read someone's resting peacefully in Lewiston, is it Lewiston? I'm going to figure out how to say that because I can't say it. Idaho. What do we think that means instantly? Yeah, that, like when I think resting peacefully, I think dead. But then the next line, it says she wanted to see Mama. Like, I want to see her. And then it says that the dad had already seen her. So, like, is she dead? Is she not dead? I have no idea. Also, although this wasn't as important, Dad did not trust Graham and Gramps to behave themselves along the way unless they had me with them. Dad said if they tried to go on their own, he would save everyone a lot of time and embarrassment by calling the police and having them arrested before they even left the driveway. So, she's not a zombie, Jameson. That probably not. Yes. So, Graham and Gramps. Crazy old Graham and Gramps. The dad's like, yeah, if they're going to go on a trip themselves, might as well call the police now. It might sound a bit extreme for a man to call the police on his own tottery old parents, but when my grandparents got in the car, trouble just naturally followed them like a filly trailing behind a mare. My grandparents' hiddle were my father's parents, full up to the tops of their heads with goodness and sweetness, and mixed in with all that goodness and sweetness was a large dash of peculiarity. This combination made them interesting to know, but you could never predict what they would do or say. Once it was settled that the 3 of us would go, the journey took an alarming, expanding need to hurry that was like walloping great thundercloud assembling around me. During the week before we left, the sound of the wind was hurry, hurry, hurry. And at night, even in the silent darkness, whispered, rush, rush, rush. I did not think we would ever leave, and yet I did not want to leave. I did not really expect to survive the trip. But I had decided to go, and I would go, and I had to be there by my mother's birthday. This was extremely important. I believed that if there was any chance to bring my mother back home, it would happen on her birthday. If I had said this aloud to my father or my grandparents, they would have said that I might as well try to catch a fish in the air. as I did not say it aloud. But I believed it. Sometimes I am as ornery and stubborn as an old donkey. My father says I lean on broken reeds and I will get a face full of swamp mud one day. When at last Graham and Gramps Hiddle and I set out on our first day of the trip, I prayed for the first 30 minutes solid. I prayed that we would not be in an accident. I was terrified of cars and buses, and that we would get there by my mother's birthday, 7 days away, and that we would bring her home. Over and over, I prayed the same thing. I prayed to trees. This was easier than praying directly to God. There was nearly always a tree nearby. As we pulled onto the Ohio Turnpike, which is the flattest, straightest piece of road in God's whole creation, Grams interrupted my prayer. Salamonica! I should explain right off that my real name is Salamonica Tree Hiddle. Salamonica, my parents thought, was the name of the Indian tribe to which my great-great-grandmother belonged. My parents were mistaken. The name of the tribe was Sienka. But since my parents did not discover their error until I was born, they were by then used to the name. It remains Salamonica. My middle name, Tree, comes from your basic tree, a thing of such beauty to my mother that she made it part of my name. She wanted to be more specific and use sugar maple tree, but her very favorite, but Salamonica sugar maple tree Hiddle was a bit much even for her. My mom used to call me Salamonica, but after she left, only my grandparents Hiddle called me Salamonica when they were not calling me Chickabiddy. To most other people, I was Sal, and to a few boys who thought they were especially amusing, I was Salamander. In the car, as we started our long journey to Lewiston, Idaho, my grandmother Hiddle said, Salamonica, why don't you entertain us? What sort of thing do you have in mind? Graham said, how about a story? Spin us a yarn. So as you can see, all of these people are from Kentucky, which is more southern. So they say a lot of funny expressions. They, kind of talk with an accent, spin us a yarn. Mrs. Kneifel never says that, but he's saying, yeah, tell me a story, entertain me. I certainly do know heaps of stories, but I learned most of them from Gramps. Gramps suggested I tell one about my mother that I could not do. I had just reached the point where I could stop thinking about her every minute of every day. Gramps said, well then, what about your friends? You got any tales about them? Instantly, Phoebe Winterbottom came to mind. There was certainly a hog's belly full of things to tell about her. I could tell you an extensively strange story, I warned. Oh, good, Graham said. Delicious. And that is how I happened to suspend my tree prayers and tell them about Phoebe Winterbottom, her disappearing mother, and the lunatic. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so we are 2 paragraphs in. Like I said, some of these are nice and short. So we know that Sal is on a trip. They are heading to go find her mother, and Sal is hoping to bring her back home. But then they also said that she was resting peacefully. So what does that mean? I don't know. Is that just where her new home is? Is she actually dead? Literally don't know. That is what we're going to be finding out in our story. Her real name is Salamonica Tree Hiddle, no, Landon, you're doing absolutely nothing right now. And I guarantee you that's not what Mrs. Siddig said to do.
I'm done.
Do you have 20 AR points? Have you finished your language arts NWEA? No to both of those. Well, you're doing nothing. And I know Mrs. Siddig didn't say, when you're done, do nothing. So, anyways, they're on a trip. And we're about to see all the sights they're going to hear. And we're going to hear so much about Phoebe Winterbottom. And I don't know if you caught on how ornery Graham and Gramps are already, but we are going to hear about their ornery life so much. I'm hoping by tomorrow I will decide what your guys' project's going to be. I really haven't decided yet what I want you guys to do. Haven't decided. Bottom is in winter. It's just Phoebe Winterbottom, Landon. Let's not make fun of people's names. That's not polite. So we are ending 4 minutes early, but that's okay. Thank you for joining. I cannot wait to read this story more tomorrow. No homework for reading RTI today. I will see you tomorrow. But that still doesn't mean we're going to be making fun of what the author said, Landon. Okay? That was unnecessary to put in our chat. Bye, friends. See you later. Zach, get back on.